Hey guys, this is Jules with True Crime Reactions. Disclaimer. Everything stated in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. And just like everything else in these cases we discuss here on this channel, everything is alleged. Okay, so back on May the 7th, so just 2 days ago, I posted this video where we finally had a ruling on if Kohberger's family was going to be allowed in the courtroom during the trial. Honestly, it's really sad, regardless of how you feel about the case and the defendant and the evidence, that his family being able to be there or not for the full thing is even in question. It really is just sad that this is even a situation. But then by the time we got to the end of this document, it turned out that it really wasn't a situation, because the judge puts in the last part of the order that the state wanted them to be in the courtroom the whole time anyway, so that it was easier for whenever they do want to call them up. And so it was like, okay, what was the point of this entire thing? It's almost like it was only done so that something about his family testifying gets put up in the news and those negative twists can be put on things, because we already know how all this stuff normally works. At the time that I recorded that video, I hadn't realized that this one had also released, because whenever I saw the family one, this one was not available yet. By the time I got to editing it, this one was already up and ready to go. So I went ahead and recorded me reading the entire document. So I'm just going to go ahead and let this one play now. This is about the psychological testing that was done by the defense and what the state will and will not be allowed to do whenever it comes to mimicking said testing, and if the defense will be able to actually watch the testing be done. Like, will he be able to have somebody basically accompany him to the testing? Okay, here we go. Regarding the order on the state's motion for his psychological examination and extension of deadline. Now, the argument, I'm assuming from this introduction, is that there should be counsel present for the mental health examination. We're just going to go ahead and read this introduction. I'm going to go through the facts, the analysis, and then go through the conclusion real quick, because this is 17 pages. At the end of the day, if we can't say that we have issues with the fact that the defense has not been able to do their own testing on the knife sheath DNA, and then complain that the state wants to also test him for all the things that the defense is claiming that he now has when it comes to autism, a diagnosis that means that he has really bad dexterity and motor skill issues, and then on top of his OCDs and all the other things that they are having to come out and talk about. The court did not want to separate the hearings in a way that this information would come out only after there's a conviction. So they're having to present it all now, which really sort of muddies the waters for people that don't understand the fact that this stuff is only being submitted because it has to be, even though it's technically stuff about the death penalty, and honestly has nothing at all to do with the case facts and what's being presented when it comes to determining his guilt or innocence. This is literally stuff that's only going to even matter if he is found guilty. I really wish they would have separated it differently, and honestly, it should be like that across the board. The fact that there's so many different rules in every single county and every single state, it's really ridiculous. I understand the fact that we're supposed to be able to, the states have their own powers in certain things, but when it comes to stuff like this, the definitions and what means something when it comes to murder, when it comes to stalking, when it comes to the R word, when it comes to SA, when it comes to anything with children, the definitions, the standards, the punishments, it should be the same across the board for the entire country. When it comes to the deadlines that are allowed in certain things, there should be something that is set, a pattern, a template that is set, that only gets broken for extreme circumstances. Now, granted, this case would definitely be one of those extreme circumstances, but we see all of these shenanigans and all of this just nothing but games going on. Like, honestly, the whole court system is really just another Ponzi scheme. It's just another way to collect money for things that are unnecessary. I mean, the entire situation about the defendant's family, again, was a redundant argument. How many of these things have we seen already happen here? Things that don't need to be happening because they make no sense, and in the long run, they ended up going completely nowhere. Most of this stuff is completely pointless. So this introduction says, before the court is the state's motion to conduct an examination of defendant pursuant to IC 18-2074C, and to extend the penalty phase rebuttal disclosure deadline to accommodate opinions arising from that examination. Defendant does not dispute that his penalty phase expert disclosures opining to his mental conditions trigger the state's right under the statute to conduct its own mental health examination. What is in dispute, however, is the scope of the examination, whether the defense counsel may be present, and whether the state has shown good cause to extend the rebuttal disclosure deadline. I'm just going to tell you right now, whatever was tested for with the defense testing, the exact same test should be done with the state. Nothing more, nothing less, just their own experts. When it comes to counsel being present, damn straight. It's no different than a guardian or a parent needing to be present whenever there is a minor. This person, this suspect, this defendant is in the custody and guardianship of the state. They are in the custody and guardianship of their defense attorney. Damn straight one of them should be present, if not just watching outside and observing without being in the room itself. But yes, they should definitely be present. Why that's an argument, I don't understand. Sounds like common frickin' sense to me. Now, when it comes to good cause for the extension, in my opinion, the fact that all of this stuff is being submitted when it comes to the DP phase, all of this wouldn't even be mattering right now, and we wouldn't be having to do all this extra crap while also doing the important stuff when it comes to the specific evidence for the trial, if they would just separate this all correctly. But the state has the right to ask for more time because all of this is being submitted now, granted, per the order of the court, but that still means the state has just as much right to go through all of the stuff being handed over to them, the same way that Anne has come in and said, hey, they just handed me X amount of new discovery, and now we're going to need X amount more time to go through it. That's only fair. That makes sense to me. Now, I'm not going to read this entire document. As always, the links for the documents will be down in the description box. I am going to only continue on in this video with the portions that are important. So we'll go with the procedural background because it gives you the timing for how everything sort of came to be and why the extension is being asked for. On January 23rd, 2025, defendant timely disclosed guilt phase expert opinions by two mental health professionals who examined defendant and subsequently diagnosed him with various mental and behavioral conditions, including autism spectrum disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. Following those disclosures, the state provisionally retained a psychologist to conduct an examination of defendant pursuant to IC 18-2074C and provide a report for rebuttal purposes. On March 31st, 2025, so again, this is all happening like in this year, very, very recently, defendant timely disclosed penalty phase expert opinions by five mental health professionals, including the two previously disclosed. Those five included the previous two, so three more jumped on board with matching diagnoses. That's important. Regarding his various mental/behavioral health conditions. The deadline for the state's penalty phase expert disclosures was set for April 28th, 2025, so just about a week ago. On April 2nd, 2025, the state initiated communications with defense counsel about conducting an examination of the defendant. Defense counsel responded that same day, requesting the name of the experts, the nature of the testing, and whether there was any objection to defense counsel being present for the exam. Sounds pretty, I don't see a problem. The following day, the state provided the information requested, including the proposed testing. Among the tests listed was an assessment of personality structure. The state also objected to defense counsel being present. In response, defense counsel did not object to the evaluation, but did object to any testing outside the scope of what defendant's experts had conducted. Look at that. I already said that. Specifically, personality testing. She also asked the state to reconsider its position as to having counsel present during the examination. On April 7th, 2025, the state responded, indicating it would not remove personality testing from the proposed examination and would not agree to counsel being present during the examination except through a video feed or otherwise by having counsel shielded from defendant's view. Fair. That's what I said. As long as they can observe the entire thing, I would assume multiple angles would be extremely appropriate for this situation. I don't have a problem with that. On April 11th, 2025, the state's mental health expert informed counsel he was not able to continue on the case. The states left? The states left? Not the defendants. Not the defendants experts. They're all standing their ground, including frickin' Cyree, okay? They're all standing their ground. The states people are jumping ship? What? That's cray-cray. Approximately 1 week later, the state retained a replacement and they have redacted his name because the disclosure still almost a month later, because today is May the 7th, it has not been disclosed. Okay. An informed defendant of such. So the defense at least knows who it is. Okay. The state indicated it still needed to discuss with specifics of the examination with their new doctor, including his position on having counsel present. Okay, so it's a dude. On April 22nd, 2025, the state alerted defense counsel via email that their new doctor believed personality testing was warranted and objected to counsel's presence. The state also sought a stipulation to extend the rebuttal disclosure deadline for purposes of disclosing the doctor's opinion. Defense counsel responded that same day, objecting to the deadline extension, to personality testing, and to her exclusion from the room. On March 25th, 2025, the state filed the current motion that's now being ordered on. So I wanted to see exactly what personality testing in a criminal case is used for. And again, this is just going to be a very vague definition from Bing. If you need something deeper than this, feel free to have at it. This is what this says. Personality testing is a crucial tool in forensic psychology. It is used to assess mental health and personality adjustment in criminal cases, such as family custody and child protection evaluations, personal injury assessments, work compensation and disability decisions, and immigration evaluations. Psychological evaluations for the court typically include record review, clinical examination of the defendant, interview of collaterals, psychological testing, and preparation of a written report. I mean, it sounds like everything they're supposed to be doing anyway. And honestly, taking into consideration the fact that they did have an expert leave, the judge is right here stating that considering the circumstances of what happened, the court finds the delay in all the things that needed to be done actually being done, i.e. the examination actually being held up. It's because the prior expert left unexpectedly, not really due to anything regarding what the state's done. That's true, because if the guy just jetted off, it really isn't, the state's fault that happened. That was sort of like something they were going to have to just juggle. However, the state's request to extend the rebuttal disclosure deadline to 21 days after the examination runs the risk of prejudicing the defendant. Given the posture of this case, the volume of discovery, and the upcoming trial date, the court will allow an extension to May 27th, 2025, so that defendant has ample time to consider and potentially respond to the state's disclosure. Defendant shall be made available to the state's expert for examination within the next 7 to 10 days, thus leaving the doctor approximately 2 weeks to complete the report. And there is a footnote down here that says, in its oral ruling, the court indicated the extension would be 21 days from the date of the hearing, which falls on Memorial Day. Due to the holiday, the court will allow the state an extra day. Further, given that the deadline follows a weekend holiday, the court expects defendant will be flexible if a day or two extra is needed. Yeah, I don't see the problem with that either. Personality testing is not allowed. The state seeks to allow its expert to conduct personality tests on defendant during the examination to confirm, rebut, or otherwise contextualize the neuropsychological conditions diagnosed by defendant's experts, particularly autism. The state argues there is no basis to limit its doctor's professional judgment as to the appropriate areas of examination, and further, defendant has opened the door by offering testimony about his lack of personality disorder. All right, let's see what this footnote says here. One of defendant's forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Eileen Ryan, concluded in her expert report that defendant does not have a childhood history of behavior that is consistent with conduct disorder or antisocial personality disorder in adulthood, nor does he meet criteria for antisocial personality disorder. See, and I don't really know who really said that he was really antisocial besides the people that apparently had issues with him. There's actually a clip I've saved for forever. I'm going to go ahead and play it right here.
When he first moved here, I invited him to a pool party. He actually came out, talked to everybody out there. They were, he was social with everybody. So I was talking to his dad outside first, because his dad was out there. Bryan must have been organizing the apartment. He came down and he was a little odd, but I'm kind of odd to some people, so I didn't think much of it. He was nice to me, social. So when I brought him to the pool party and after, I was like, it's weird that your dad says you're antisocial or whatever he was saying, because you're not that way at all. You're not that way at all.
Now, this is the neighbor that invited him to the pool party that the dad apparently was like, hey, will you sort of be nice to my son? He has issues making friends, blah, blah, blah. He just said, I don't know why your dad said that, because obviously you're not. So apparently, if he's comfortable with you, he's outgoing and he's talkative and all these things, that sounds pretty normal to me. So maybe he's just the type of person that he's quiet and withdrawn if he doesn't know you or if he's in a professional setting. But whenever he's around his friends, he's more open and outspoken and more fun. I mean, even though this is being said by this psychiatrist, we did have friends of Bryan Kohberger's from back in like middle school, high school come out and say that, yeah, he had a bunch of friends. He was always around people. But whenever they would go to parties and stuff like that, he never wanted to be like in the mixture of the crowd. He was always sort of off by himself. I don't like being around a bunch of people either. So not having a whole bunch of connections really isn't a big deal. It feels like he was just selective with maybe who he was talkative around, who he let his true personality out around. Being guarded isn't a crime. But again, like I said, this being said by his own forensic psychiatrist about not meeting this like personality disorder for being antisocial and all that really does go back to what this guy said in the very beginning. And he spent time with him at pool parties and hanging out and stuff. So yeah. And I think the whole big deal about this is that this is a test that wasn't conducted by the defense. Technically, I guess the way that they want to conduct the test isn't the same way that the defense did. And that makes sense. That goes back to everything that we said about they need to be literally mimicking exactly the same thing that the defense did. It's only fair that they follow that rule, considering that the defense can't do the same thing when it comes to the damn DNA. But I guess now it doesn't even matter because no one even cares about the IgG anymore, at least no one of the court. They're fading that out, blue pilling it out, having pain, lie on the stand, and there's going to be all kinds of stuff that happens after that. It's going to be interesting to see how this lie ends up playing out, but let's continue. Defendant notes that his proffered evidence is limited to his diagnoses of ASD, autism, OSD, obsessive compulsive disorder, ADHD, and a history of eating disorders and substance use. Because he is not being diagnosed or even tested for a personality disorder, he argues testing for such is beyond the scope of rebuttal. Well, the history of eating disorders and the substance use, a lot of people came out and were acting as if those things weren't true, but here we have him admitting it himself. So to say that he was able to kick a habit as bad as H, okay? Now, people are going to say, oh, the whole pointy thing that's used for that. I'm pretty positive there's other ways to take it, that you don't have to always use a pointy thing. So that's not necessarily, that doesn't necessarily mean anything when it comes to him being squeamish or having dexterity issues or any of those things, literally at all. But we have heard that he's vegan, but we did hear that from an aunt that's been divorced from the family for like well over 10 years, I believe, by the time this all happened. So we don't really know, honestly, how true that stuff is to current day. I mean, it could very well be true that he is still vegan and all those things, but we don't know. Those sometimes are just things that people do to get to a certain point, and then they sort of maneuver back into that gray area, It says right here that considering that the court is allowing the state an extension of time to examine defendant and disclose its expert opinions, time is of the essence. Any new potential diagnosis or evidence uncovered through personality testing may elicit the need for further testing and rebuttal by defendant, as well as significant post-examination motion practice. Weighing the marginal utility of personality testing in this case against the existing time constraints and the timing of the state's motion, considering its knowledge of the scope of the defense agreement, the court will not allow it. So, no personality testing whatsoever, okay? However, to equalize the playing field, the court will not allow defense experts to testify about whether defendant meets or historically met the criteria for personality disorder or reference the state's failure to conduct personality testing on defendant. I mean, fair. If it wasn't done by the defense and he's not allowing the state to conduct it, nothing about a personality disorder, technical diagnosis should be mentioned. Only the things that come from the things he's actually already been tested and diagnosed with, which they apparently have ample information about. In other words, defendant cannot use personality disorder or the asserted non-existence thereof and the lack of testing for it as a shield and a sword. Moreover, the court will not prohibit its expert from commenting on the fact that personality testing may have aided in his evaluation, but that testing was not performed by the defense experts nor available to him. In turn, the defendant may not assert or imply that the doctor they haven't disclosed yet, insert here, could have conducted personality testing. This approach strikes a balance between ensuring defendants' rights are preserved while at the same time allowing the state a mean for effective rebuttal within the time constraints posed by the extension. All of that sounds honestly extremely fair. This is an extremely fair ruling. Now let's see what he says when it comes to excluding counsel. He starts off with the heading saying that the Sixth Amendment does not require counsel's presence at the exam. Now, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but it looks like right here that the main argument the state has is that this new doctor that's come in is claiming that the counsel's presence would interfere with the validity of the examination. But I don't see how, if they're not there physically and they're just looking in through like Zoom cameras. You know what I mean? Okay, so on page 16, he has his final statement about it, and he says that the court will allow counsel for both sides to watch the examination through one-way video feed or something similar that prohibits them from being seen or heard during the examination. Under no circumstances will counsel be able to interrupt. And then he basically just says that it's, granted in part and denied in part. Damn, Hippler. This was a very, very, very fair order. Let me know how you guys are feeling about this, because I really do feel like this is the most fair that we've seen him play this. If he did stuff like this and went into that gray area for all of these that are reasonable, then we wouldn't be having so many issues here, I don't think. But he just seems like he doesn't like being there. We know that he hasn't done anything to this caliber before, literally ever. But again, this is very fair. Again, this is also stuff that doesn't matter, honestly, until it comes to the penalty phase, if there is a penalty phase. So let's see how this plays out. But let me know how you guys are feeling about this one down in the comments. If you like the way that I present this information and give my opinion, please don't forget to leave a like on the way out. Subscribe to the channel if you were not subscribed already. And please don't forget to make sure that that notification bell is set to all so you don't miss any of my rants, reviews, reactions, updates, or deep dives. See y'all.